Hello, welcome back to Genius. So in this class, we'll talk about functions. All right, basically functions. We also mention function arrow functions. We talk about the scope of functions, function hoisting, and closures. But we might not be going too deep into closures. Okay, but in the next class, we'll also be talking in couple of in next classes. We'll be talking about closures. So that you understand what closure is. So today we'll talk about functions, other functions, scope of functions, talk about hosting, or talk of closures. So you're supposed to read, you don't know JavaScript, scope and closures, chapter 1 to 3. You're also supposed to read EJS chapter 3, that's eloquent JavaScript, and Docket chapter 5. So you're going to be building a reusable function. Okay, a usable function, a BMI, for example, like a calculator. You'd also create a function with inner functions and closures. You create a simple calculator script. So when you're doing this practice, when you're doing this assignment, if you get stuck, please reach out to us so that we can help you out. Okay, always reach out to us. We are always available. So what is a function in JavaScript? A function is a reusable block of code designed to perform a particular task. It is a reusable block of code that is designed to perform a particular task. That means whatever you have in your function will be reused. So if you have a particular task that you want to reuse the code often, so you need to turn it into a function so that you can use it. Let's say now you have a function you have a block of code that is calculating the maybe salary of employee in your company. So it is something that can be reusable. It is something that can be very, very reusable. So you have to put it in a function. All right. So instead of writing the same code multiple times, you put it in a function and call it whenever needed. So a function is also a value that you're storing somewhere in the memory. So whenever you call the function's name, JavaScript will go and fetch the block of code that you have written and stored in that location and run it. So a function somehow is like a variable where you store value. The same thing, the block of code is the value that you're storing. So the basic syntax is you use the function keyword, then you give the function a name. Then if there are parameters, you would include the parameters. Okay. So now, inside of this block of code, you include your code to execute. So you could have your return value. It could be optional. So I believe most of you know what a function is, but let's just go and do something. Let's go and do something. So I have a file here. So I'm just going to create a function. I'm just going to create a simple function that will add two numbers. So I will say I'll use the function keyword. Then I'll give it a name, add. The name of the function is add. So it could take two parameters. It will take first number, I'll call it fn, and then second number, sn. Okay, then this is the block of code. So I would say, I could say const is equal to, I'll say sum is equal to fn plus sn. Okay, then I could return the sum. I could return the sum. So, but not all functions can return a value. Some of them don't just do something without returning a value. So, but in this case, we are returning a value. So we have created a function. The name of the function is add. We use the function keyword, then in parentheses we put the parameters. It is not compulsory that they must have parameters. It's not compulsory. Then anything inside of this curly braces is what is the block of code that is the function body. So this is basically what JavaScript will be storing somewhere in location, in memory location. So whenever I now do something like this, if I do something like this, so this is what we calling the function. When you use the name of the function and you use parentheses, this is the calling of the function. But in this case, since our function has parameters, we just give it first number, second number. And then is of course it's returning. So we'll need to say put it in a variable too. We could just say sum is equal to this. So now if I console.log this sum, you're going to see you see the value will be 7. So if I call load function, it gives me 7. So this is a function that takes two parameters and returns a value. So some functions don't take parameters, some functions don't return values. Okay. And let's continue. Functions are important because they are reusable. All right. Reusability is one thing that makes function. Now, you see this function that I've just created. I can use it anywhere. I can use it anytime. All right. I can use it anywhere multiple times. Now it makes your code looks more organized. So large complex programs or large programs, you can break them into smaller manageable parts using functions. So function is something that you have to form the habit of doing. You have to have this of creating functions. Modularity, each function can focus on a single responsibility. So imagine that all the responsibilities of your application, you were able to put them in different functions. It makes your code maintainable, and the modularity is amazing. Now, abstraction, it hides implementation details from the rest of the code. Now, when I call this add function, if you're calling this add function, you don't need to know about the implementation. All you have to do is to know that, okay, this is the name and these are the parameters. And whenever you call them like this, you're going to get a sum of them. So basically, that's all you need. Okay. You don't need to understand the implementation. You don't need to know how this thing is being implemented. So that gives you that abstraction. Maintainability, easier to debug and update. So if this is my function, if I have any issue with, oh, my function is not working fine, I know where to go to, and it will be easier for me to debug my application. Guys, this thing is real. When you start building big application, you're going to understand that building application is not easy. But these small things, these small principles that you can keep can actually help you. All right. Maintainability, abstraction, modularity, organization, reusability, function can actually help you achieve a lot. And I can tell you, as I'm building this platform, all right, whenever I have to debug a problem, all right, on the application, I just find a way to go to the function that I called. And it's just easy because I know where to go to. So when you build your application, breaking them into functions, and most especially if you start building using object-oriented programming style, it's going to be it will make more sense and it will be easier. So form the habit of using functions. So let's take a look at types of functions that we have. The first one is function declaration. That is what we have just done. The one we just used now is called function declaration. We just declared the function. This is function declaration. If you use this syntax to create a function, it is called function declaration. So this is function declaration. You use the function keyword, the name of the function. If there are parameters, you include. If they are not, you leave the bracket empty, and then you put in here. So let me just create another function. Let me create another function. I'm not going to call this function again, but I'll create another function. This is function declaration. I will say hi. All right. What this function does is say hi. So it does not take any parameter. So in the body, it will just do console.log. So it is not taking any parameter, it is not returning any value. All right. So I'll just say hi. You understand? So this function, what it does is just to say hi. So in this case now, this function does not take any parameter, it does not return any value. So, but we are using the type of function called function declaration. Okay, so this is function declaration. This one is also function declaration. So, but the difference is that this one takes parameter, this one does not take parameters. This one returns a value, this one does not return a value. So I can just go ahead and say hi and call it. So this is how you call a function. If you use the, okay, say hi is the name, not hi. Say hi. So when you use the name of the function, then you put parentheses. If you run this code now, it's going to say hi. All right? It's just going to print hi. Like I always say, if you have any difficulty, reach out to us, drop a message in the WhatsApp group, reach out to us, okay? Now, you can see here, we are using function declaration and we are calling it. Of course, this guy returns a value, so we are passing the value that it returns to the console.log and it prints it out. So hoisted, it can be hoisted. Now, when you use function declarations can be hoisted. So you can even use the function, call the function before declaration. Okay. So remember when we were talking about variable declaration and hoisting, we advise you not to use the var keyword because var keyword causes hoisting, and it is a very bad practice. But in function, there is no problem. Okay, so I'm going to call this say hi before I even declared it. There will be no issue. JavaScript will hoist it. What do we mean by hoisting? You can see that normally um, this function is supposed to be declared before calling it. All right. But the way we have done it now, we have called it first before declaring it. So what JavaScript will do is that before JavaScript would run this program, JavaScript will take all the functions that you have created in this file, JavaScript will take all of them to the top. So in a way, JavaScript will rearrange it. So JavaScript is going to rearrange your code and take all the functions to the top. JavaScript will take all the variables that were created using the var keyword to the top. But please don't create your variables with var keyword. Don't even do hoisting with variables. Hoisting is okay with functions, but don't try it with variables. So if I run this code now, it will work perfectly because JavaScript will hoist the function declaration to the top, and we are cool. We don't have any issues here. Okay, so this is what we call hoisting. So we also have another one called function expression. Remember that I told you that function is a variable, is a value, and function can be evaluated. All right. So now you can see that we are assigning a variable, we are assigning a function declaration to a variable. So this is called function expression. So in this case, everything on the right-hand side after the equal to operator is an expression. So it's a function expression. So there are different ways to create functions. So this is one of the ways. So I can go on and say, okay, I want to create a function expression. I would say const, I will call it say hi as the name. Then I'll say is equal to, use the function keyword. All right. But it will not have any name in this case. You don't have to put any name after the function keyword. I can now say console.log and I'm saying hi. All right. So this is function expression. So remember, this is this is an expression. Everything here is an expression. JavaScript is going to evaluate this whole expression. Then it will assign this other expression to this hi, say hi variable. So if I go on now, look at it. If I say console.log, if I say console.log, say hi, look at what it's going to print out for me. It's going to print out this thing that we have. So if I say console.log, say hi, you can see it printed a function value. Look at what it printed for me. So you can see, but if I now go on and say, this is a variable, the say hi is a variable, But if I now put parentheses after the name of the variable, it becomes, since this say hi is a function expression, now JavaScript will evaluate it and see that, oh, it's a function. Then if JavaScript now sees the parentheses, it will say, okay, this guy wants to call this function. It will now call it. So this is a function expression. We are assigning a function declaration to a variable. And anytime, even if I say, as I have said, say hi, and I put parentheses, it will call that function. I can also do this. I can also say const uh, say hi, hi, okay, is equal to say hi. So you can see that I'm using this function now as an expression. So if I go on now to say hi, the second hi, all right? Remember, this is not the normal one. So what I did was I created a function expression here. So this variable say hi is a function, and then I am assigning the value of this say hi to this other say hi. All right. Then I'm calling it here. Do you understand? So I can even say hi to, let it not be confusing. Can say hi to. So if I call say hi to now, it's going to, JavaScript will assign the value it found in this say hi variable, and then it will assign it to this guy. Then when we call this say hi to, it will do the same thing because it has the same, it will just say hi. So you can see what we are doing here. We are using function as a variable here. So that's function expression. We are assigning a function to a variable, all right, and then that variable, you can do with it whatever you want to do with it. You can call it as to be a function, you can assign it to another variable and stuff like that. So it is not hoisted, please. Function expressions are not hoisted. Let's go and see example. Function expressions are not hoisted. So now imagine that, look at what I'm doing here. I am trying to call say hi even before the declaration. So if we go on now, guys, I will have to clear my... Okay, so if I call this now, there will be an error because I am using function expression here. It will not be hoisted, guys. It won't be hoisted. So it says reference error. Cannot access say hi before initialization. So JavaScript did not hoist this function expression, and that means it did not see this say hi before we called it. So make sure when you're using function expressions, you don't do function hoisting. Okay. We also have arrow functions. All right, this was created or added in ES6. So function can just be as simple as this. Look at what we are doing here. As simple as this. Okay, instead of course, this is somehow a function expression, but the function body itself is not the normal function. So you can do this. Okay, so if I go now, I can say this is I can take this one out. This is what I'm going to do. I will say const say hi is equal to, this is how you create a function expression. You open parentheses like this, you do the equal to, then do the arrow, then put your anything inside here that is a function body. So I can just say console.log. I'll say hello. All right. And I can call it here and you say hi for me. Oh, I'm saying hello the other side. All right, no problem. It's still fine. So I'm going to clear my guy here. Oops. I'll clear. Then I'll run. So when I run, it calls this. So you can see, look at the difference here. Look at what we are doing here. We are not using function keyword. So we are using the parentheses like this. If there is any parameter, you can add. All right. Then I'll say equal to, then arrow sign, then this. So, but now in this case, you can see that our function has only one statement. So in your function, in your arrow function, if your function has only one statement, you can go on to do this. You can go on to do this. This would also work. If it's only one statement, you can remove the curly braces. And if I run this code now, it will still work. All right. If it is only one statement, if your if your function body has only one statement, you can just remove the parentheses, the curly braces. Now, if your function only has one parameter, let's say we are saying a as the parameter, all right, or we are saying we ask the user for name, and we are going to say hello, and we'll say plus name. Okay, so in this case, we can say hi, and then the name is person. So you can see this time around, this say hi is requesting a parameter, and then I have to pass in this parameter here. So if I go now to call this function, it will say hello person. All right. So in this case, if your arrow function has only one parameter, you can remove the bracket, the parentheses like this, and everything works fine. All right, so these are some tricks, but don't jump into it, okay? If possible, continue to use the parentheses no matter the number of parameters you have. Also use the curly braces no matter if it is a single line of code on the function body until you master it. But these are common things you just need to know, okay? So now it's a shorter syntax. It's just a shorter syntax. Okay. So lexically, this binding does not have its own. It does not have its own. Lexically, there is something we call the this keyword. Now, I'm not going to introduce it here because it can cause a lot of confusion. So I'm not going to introduce it here. But what you need to understand is that arrow function does not have their own their own this keyword, and their own this object. They borrow or they use this object in their environment. So just have it like that. Just know that there's something we call this object, and then most functions have this object. Okay, so you also find the this object in objects, this keyword in objects. So you can see it's even hard for me to explain it here. So, but we are going to be talking about objects later on, and we'll talk about this keyword, all right, and how it works. So just understand that the arrow function does not basically have this binding. It uses the binding of its surrounding. It cannot be used as constructors. So arrow functions are best used when you want to have an unnamed function, a function that you just use once or something like that, or maybe in callback functions. That is where it's mostly used. Okay. We also have anonymous functions. Anonymous functions are functions without a name. Okay. So you can see we are using this set timeout, and inside of this set timeout, we need to, okay, now this is what we mean by callbacks. We'll talk about callbacks in another class, so I'm not going to explain it here. So, but anonymous functions are mostly used in callbacks, all right? So don't worry, we'll talk about callbacks. So I'm going to explain it better when we get to asynchronous programming, okay? So it is often used as arguments to other functions. That is what we mean by callbacks, okay? So when a function can also take another function. All right, so when you want to pass an argument, a function as an argument to another function, you can use the anonymous function. Okay, you can even use the arrow function too. So we also have named as function expression. So remember, in the other function expression we did not give it a name. All right, we did not give it a name, but you can also give it a name. It's just that for me, I don't use this often, all right? But you just need to know all these things. So in this case, we gave it, remember in the function expression we did before, we didn't give it a name, all right? But in this one now, we are giving it a name. So this is a named function expression. Name is useful for recursion or debugging. So this is somehow higher. It's more somehow advanced, all right? So don't bother about it too much, but understand that it's something we call function expressions and something we call named function expressions, all right? So we also have what we call immediately invoked function expression. I use this one a lot too, especially in my React, whenever I'm using the use effect in React and I want to make a call to the database or to an API. All right, so that is where I use this thing mostly. Okay, so it will execute immediately after definition. It will execute immediately after definition. Okay, so now let me go and show you. So let me take everything out here. So I want to create a function that I don't need to call it. Remember, after declaring a function, you will call it. Calling it means you use the name of the function, then you put parentheses at the end. All right. That is you after you create it, you call it. But in this function, immediately invoke function expression, we are creating the function and calling it immediately. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a function. All right. I don't even need to give it a name. I don't need to give it a name. All right. So I'm just going to say console.log hello. Hmm? Now you can see, okay, so I have to give it a name. Or I can use another function that I don't want to give it a name. What do I do here? All right, no problem. So I can just say, I'll call it, oh my God. I'll call it function. I'll call it hello. That's the name of the function. So now, if I want, I have declared this function now. So I will need to call it. If I want to call it, I will do hello like this. So I will call it this way. But if I want to use the function immediately invoked function, what I will need to do is look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap this whole function in parentheses. Look at what I'm doing here. I'm wrapping it in parentheses. And then I am putting the another parenthesis outside of it. So guys, look at what we are doing here. Now let me explain. Remember what we mean by expressions. Let me take you back to expressions. Expression is anything that can be evaluated by JavaScript. You know that parenthesis is an expression. You know that. When you were doing operators, precedents, and stuff like that, we use parenthesis to tell JavaScript the expression they will call for us first. So when you have anything inside of parenthesis, JavaScript is going to evaluate it. You see this thing I have now? Okay, let me remove the other parentheses. You see this thing I have like this? Okay, let me make it even clearer. I'll put it in the next line. Look at what I have here. Okay, so you can see that everything inside of this parenthesis. All right. If you put anything inside of a parenthesis, JavaScript will evaluate it as an expression. So this is an expression. So when JavaScript evaluates this whole thing inside of this parenthesis, what is it going to do? It will find out, oh, this is a function. Do you understand? It will evaluate it as a function. And then when you now do this again, this means whenever JavaScript sees a parenthesis after a function evaluation, it will call that function. So that is what we are doing here. It is immediately invoked. It is immediately called. So that is why it is called immediately invoked function expression. It is immediately called. So first of all, JavaScript will evaluate the first parenthesis. So anything that it says inside here to evaluate it. So in this case, it's going to evaluate it to be a function. And then the next parenthesis means that call the function. So if I just run this code now, remember, I am not doing any extra calling again. I'm not saying hello, parenthesis. I'm not doing anything like that again. So if I run this code now, you can see it ran. It called the function. So this is called immediately invoked or immediately called, let me put it this way, immediately called function expression. So immediately after for the function is evaluated, it is being called. So it is commonly used to avoid polluting the global scope. So this function that we have created now will not be found in the global scope. Okay, but the thing is that you cannot reuse it. You cannot reuse this function. It only runs once. You can't reuse it. So this is immediately invoked or immediately called. Let me use that because the first parenthesis will be evaluated by JavaScript and it's with, oh, this is a function. Then the second parenthesis, anytime JavaScript sees parenthesis after a variable name or a variable, a function, a variable expression, it would call it as a function. So we also have the generator functions, but I'm not going to go into details here. Okay. We'll talk about it in a later class. Okay, but just know that we have something we call generator functions. All right, just know. So, but if you think you're brave enough, you can go out and do some digging. But I will talk about it in a later session. There's the way I teach. I don't want to bring in more confusion. So, but I'm bringing it here so that you will know that something we call a generator function. It is advanced, anyways. Okay. All right, we also have the asynchronous functions. We'll be talking more about it in later class. Okay, we'll explain to you what asynchronous functions are. So basically, we use asynchronous functions to fetch APIs, to call APIs. I use it, you will use it more when you start working with maybe React, calling APIs, or even your backend. We also use it very well in calling other APIs too. Not just only API. If you want a function to run asynchronously, if you want to read a file, all right, a file, you will use a synchronous function. So we are going to talk, when we talk about asynchronous programming, the async with keywords, we are going to talk about that. We'll talk about the asynchronous functions there. So the only difference is that you use the async keyword before the name of before the function keyword. That's just the only difference. We use the async keyword before the function keyword. But don't worry, we'll talk about it in later class. So we also have function parameters and arguments. You can see that functions can have parameters and arguments. So in this case, we also have default function parameters. Okay, let me throw some light on these function parameters. When you have a function, all right, if for any reason you're going to give your function something to work with, you will give it to it as a parameter. So when you're declaring the function, all right, I have a function called add. And this function, I have to give it something for it to work. What do I have to give it? I will have to give it two numbers or three numbers for it to work. So that is what we call function parameters. So those things that you need to give it for it to function well is what we call parameters. And those parameters, you give it a variable name. You can call it whatever. You can A, B, C, whatever, but give it a meaningful name. All right, depending on, I can say first name, second name. I think first name, second name, first number, Fn as first number, second number as Sn. Okay, so you can see I'm giving it, so this function is expecting two numbers so that it can work with it. So I can say console.log Fn plus Sn. Okay, so in this case, this function requires, of course, remember, functions perform a particular task for you. So for you to perform that task, you need to give it something. This function needs the numbers to add. So you have to give it to it. So in this case, we are giving it two parameters, two variables to work with. So in this case, during the function declaration, we call it parameters. All right, but during the function call, we call them arguments. So you can see that it's expecting two arguments from me. So the first argument is 3, the second argument is 5. So in the function declaration, we call it parameters, but in the function call, so this is the function calling, we call them arguments. All right, so I have just explained the parameters and but now you can also want to give default parameter. Let's say let me create another function. I'll call this function, I'll call it full name. So we are going to use this thing to create full name of somebody. So the first parameter is going to be first name. All right. The second parameter is going to be, what's it called again? Last name. And then the third parameter is going to be middle name. But you know now, middle name, it's not everybody that has middle name. It's not everybody that has middle name. So what if in the case somebody did not now give us their middle name? What will happen? There will be some error. So I can go on and say first name, okay, then middle name, and then last name. Okay. So now, if I look at it now, imagine if I call this function without the middle name, there will be an error. Look at what is going to happen. Let me call it without a middle name or any of the names. Of course, some people don't have middle names. So if I say, if I call this full name now, and my first name, I'll give it as Paul C. Yes. My second name, sorry, my last name, I'll give it as Huh? And I did not provide the middle name. Remember, this is expect three parameters, but I'm giving it two arguments here. They should match. So if I run this code now, I want to clear. So if I run this code now, you look at what it printed out. Look at what it printed out. I hope, let me zoom it. It says pausing undefined one. You see, it doesn't make sense. So it's not compulsory that somebody will have a middle name. It's not compulsory that somebody will have a middle name. So what now happens? So in this case, if somebody does not have a middle name, when we are declaring or creating the function, we should give a default value. So in this case, I can say equal to empty string. So in case this guy did not provide a middle name, all right, JavaScript will use the default value that I have provided here for the middle name. So if I run this code again, you can see we no longer have any undefined here. So this is what we call default parameter. So in your code, you might be expecting that, oh, this parameter, the user might not be giving it to you. So what happens? You can give it a default value. It can be anything. It can be 0. It can be anything. It can be, you can give it anything. All right, you can give it anything. So this is just the syntax. Made do equals to the value that you want to give it to. So you want to give to it. So you can see this in this case, they are saying name is equal to guest. So in case the user of this greet method does not provide the value for this name, they will use guest as the default. Okay. So we also have something we call the rest parameters. I might not talk about rest parameters here. We'll talk about it in another class. Yes, because it can be confusing. It will take in this. I'm not going to explain it here. I'm not going to explain it here. It might raise. It's somehow advanced, and it might raise some confusion. But if you want me to talk about it, go to the WhatsApp group, drop it. Say you want me to explain rest parameters in a function. I will know that you're ready for it, but it's not necessary. Even me, I use it I don't use it often. Okay, so it's not something you should worry yourself about at this level. But if you want to learn, drop it in the WhatsApp group so that we'll do a live class for it. All right. So we also have something we call the argument object. So it's only available in normal functions, not in arrow functions. So you can, if you want to get the argument that the user has provided for you, you can actually use the argument keyword like this. So if you use the argument keyword like this, JavaScript will give it to you. So if you have a function, there is a key, okay, let me just go and show you. Okay. So before I print the console.the name, I can say JavaScript, I want you to give me the arguments that this user provided. Arguments, you can see, is a keyword already here. So these arguments will give you all the values that user have provided when they were calling the function. So if I go on and save, you see it's going to call, oh my God, what happened? Okay. All right, you can see he gave it to me. Look at what he gave me. Okay, so this argument is like an array, it's like a set. So key value pair. Sorry, it's a map, not a set. It's a map. This argument is a map, key value pair. So the key is zero based, and then you can see the first argument is person, the second argument is one. So in case I want a particular, uh, uh, if I want a particular argument, I can use the key. I can say, give me the first argument. And if I run my code, it will give me the first argument as person. Okay, so you can also work with this. But is this particular data structure is a map. So, but don't worry, we'll talk about map and sets and other this thing in later classes. Okay. So, of course, I have shown you that a function can have a return value. Functions can return any value, number, string. You remember the first add method that I did, add function that I did, it returned the sum. So you can return any value, you can return number, string, can object, you can even return other functions or even nothing. Okay, so when it's not returning anything, there is no need to use the return keyword. So when you call it, if no return statement, function returns undefined. So if there's no return value, if there's nothing return, if there's no return statement in the function return value will be undefined. So look at it here. This case, there is no return. It's just an empty block. It does not have any return statement. So when you call this, it will return undefined. We also have higher order functions. We'll talk about it in another class. It's something bigger. So a function can take another function as argument or return a function. So a function can take another function. You see this operation here as this parameter is a function. Look at it. It's being called, it's being returned. So we'll talk about it in another class, but I just want to bring it to your notice. A higher order function is a function that takes another function as an argument or even return another function. So when we say function scope, variables declared inside a function are accessible only inside that function. So any variable declared inside a function has a function scope. All right. You cannot access, I talked about scope in previous class. I think when I was talking about loops or something, all right, I've talked about function scope. I've talked about scope. So you cannot access a variable outside of the function's scope. So this local variable that we have here, you cannot have access to it outside. You cannot have, look at it, you cannot have access to it outside of the function. It's not available. The scope, there is boundary to it. You can only have access to this local variable. I want you to try it. Create a function, create a local variable inside a function, and try to access that variable outside of the function. You will get an error. So you can only access variables declared inside a function within the function scope. I've talked about function hoisting already. All right. The function declarations are hoisted, function expressions are not hoisted. So you can practice this to get your hands dirty with it. Okay, so closures. Then in the next class, we'll be talking about closures. Yes, we'll talk about closures in the next class. So, but let me just give you a hint. Functions can remember variables from their outer scope. Now, the thing is that a function can have another function inside of it. So you see, in this case, we have an outer function. All right, look at it. We have an outer function. The name of this outer function is outer. And we have another function inside of it. So this particular function is returning a function. So in this case, this is a higher order function. A higher order function is a function that takes a function as an argument or returns a function. So in this case, it is returning a function. Look at it. The return keyword, the value of it is a function. So it's returning a function. So you see, this function that we have inside of here, don't worry, I will explain this more when we talk about closure in the next class. All right, in the next class, we'll talk about closure. So we'll take enough time to explain it. So this particular function that we are returning here would always remember the counter variable here. Don't worry, it works like magic. I will show you in the next class. Okay, so but understand that functions can remember variables from their outer scope. So they can remember variables from the outer scope. They can maintain the variables from their outer scope within their own scope. Okay, so best practices: use descriptive names for your functions. Keep functions small and focused. Don't say a function is doing addition and subtraction at the same time. No, break them into two. One should do addition, one should do subtraction. No functions should perform two tasks at the same time. Avoid global variables inside functions unless it is necessary. Prefer arrow functions for short callbacks. Okay? Use default or rest parameters for flexibility. You'll learn more about rest parameters in upcoming class. Okay? So quick summary. Function declaration, is it hoisted? Yes. Does it have this keyword or this object? Yes. It is used for general case. It's general for general use. Function expression does not hoist. Function expression has the this keyword or the this object. It can be assigned to variables. It can also be passed as arguments. Arrow function does not hoist. It does not have the this keyword. It's for short syntax, and it has the lexical this from its outer. It doesn't have its own this keyword or this object, but it can borrow from the outer, from the surrounding environment. Immediately invoked function expression does not hoist. It has its own this keyword. It runs immediately. Asynchronous function hoist. Asynchronous function can hoist. It has their own this keyword. It handles asynchronous code. Generator function can also hoist. It has its own keyword, this keyword. It can pause and execute execution. So we'll talk about that in later classes. It's somehow advanced, okay? So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please, if you have any question, if you have any confusion, if you did not understand something, drop it in the WhatsApp group. Let us do a live class. All right. You can even book for a live class with me too. We owe you understanding of our training. So any class we give you, any training we give you, we owe you that. So it's your right to understand what we teach you. So reach out to us for more explanation. Okay. Do your test, do your assignment. I'll see you in the next class.